Hello, I'm Scott Wrighton and I serve as Decatur City Manager, and it's truly my pleasure to come every week to you with updates about what's going on in your city government. You know, while the national media seems to be overcome and sometimes overwhelming us with reporting about the border crisis or about the latest COVID issues or bickering between Republicans and Democrats in Washington about the budget and debt, I want you to know that the mayor and city council here in Decatur are quietly going about the important business of local government. As a matter of fact, just at their last city council meeting, they acted on several key initiatives, which probably don't rise to the same level of interest on the part of the public or of the national media, but certainly they are essential to the work that we do right here in Decatur. For example, the City Council acted on a project we call the Opticom project, where the fire station of the fire department has installed controllers at key intersections so that our response time can be faster. When first responders have to get through those intersections in order to get to a scene of an emergency quickly, this equipment makes a significant difference in our response time. And those have been installed over a couple of years, and the City Council was just approving a contract for the second phase of that. The City Council also took action to take in one step in a multi-step process to reduce the amount of clear water, clean water, whether it's from groundwater or from rainwater, that gets into our sewer system, because when that happens, residents will experience backups into their basements, or there'll be overflows into our creeks and streams. And we've made a commitment not just to the citizens of Decatur, but to the Environmental Protection Agency to significantly reduce those overflows. And we've made really good progress on it, in part because year after year, the City Council has set aside funds in their sewer fund to make sure that everything from lining of sewer pipes, or in the case last week, of raising and sealing some of the manholes that we use, and other efforts to reduce what we call infiltration and inflow, or I&I, into our sanitary sewer system. The City Council also took action on several key demolitions. Every other month or so, we're bringing additional demolitions to them because the City Council has made a significant increase in the amount of financial resources that they've set aside to take down buildings that sadly are beyond repair and simply have to be removed in order to achieve some of the objectives of our neighborhood revitalization project. One of the other things that the City Council did at the last meeting is take action to extend our broadband project to enable us to work with the school district, who received a nice grant from the state of Illinois for expansion of their broadband fiber network to connect schools, and to do that project together with the school district. These are just the things of local government that need to take place, oftentimes quietly, in city council meeting after city council meeting, to make sure that the city runs well and that the services are provided well to you. One of the things that I think will be more visible in the public and be a topic of more conversation than some of the ones that I just mentioned that were on the City Council's agenda has to do with property taxes. Some people have already started receiving in the mail notice from the county that the county and the townships have increased the equalized assessed value, or EAV as we call it. Now, by itself, a change in the EAV doesn't necessarily mean that your taxes will go up. What it means is that the county and the township have decided that the fair market value of your property has increased, and that becomes a base for the calculation of the tax levy rate later on by the school district, by the county, by the park district, by the city, and by other units of local government. There's a couple of things that I want to point out to you using this chart that the camera has been turned to. First of all, nearly half of the property tax levy for most Decatur residents goes to the Decatur Public Schools. And that's true throughout the state of Illinois, that usually the lion's share of the property tax levy goes to the school district, and that levy is set not by the City Council, it's set by the Board of Education. In like fashion, the amount of the property tax levy that goes to the Park District is not set by the City of Decatur, it's set by the Park District Board. Similarly, the county board sets that portion of the levy that goes to the county government, and then the smaller units of government like the sanitary district or the township or the mosquito abatement district or Richland Community College all set their own levies, and then those levy amounts go to the county, who puts them all together and produces the consolidated tax bill that all of us receive. Although equalized assessed values may go up, and I know from many calls that we've received here at city offices that people are concerned that because their property values have gone up based on this assessment, I'll tell you that mine alone went up by by 31% where I live. The increase in the valuation by itself doesn't increase taxes. What's important to remember is how each of these 11 different taxing bodies in the city of Decatur act on that information. Here at the city of Decatur, the mayor and city council have said, we want to make sure that our percentage of the levy, which is only about 15%, something that's illustrated by this pie chart in front of you now, that it stays that way or maybe even a little bit less. The way we do that, since we don't set the levy, the county sets the levy, all the city council does is determine a dollar amount of taxes that we need to service fire and police pensions and to fund the public library and certain debt instruments. That amount doesn't increase. Sometimes what will happen is that a local governing body will decide, well, the levy last year was X amount, we'll just keep the same levy. And while in a normal year that might be a way of keeping a lid on taxes, if the EAV, the equalized assessed value, is shooting up, that's simply a way for a local taxing body to go with a rising tide, and the net result is an increase in property taxes. The mayor and city council have been very keen to try to make sure that we don't do that with our percentage of the levy, but I cannot stress enough, and this pie chart illustrates it, is that the city of Decatur is only 15% of the levy. We only control 15% of the levy. And the city council has directed staff to make sure that when we do act on the property tax levy later this year, that we exercise fiscal prudence. The largest piece of the pie is the school district, and then what I call the big four are the city of Decatur, the Park District, and Macon County follow that, with all of the other half a dozen taxing bodies collectively only represent about 15%, shown by the brown piece of the pie here. If you have any questions about this, it's a very complicated issue. It's one of the reasons why the local media has a difficulty in covering this, is because it is very complicated. If you have questions about the tax levy, you can call the county or you can call us, but there's lots of parties that go in to making the tax levy, and you'll be hearing more from me and the mayor and city council later this fall as we work through this very important issue. One of the other topics that is discussed at the national and state level is the issue and an ongoing debate about evictions. I think that to a certain extent this issue is somewhat overblown. The idea that I think sometimes is out there is that once the eviction moratorium expires, that everybody who is behind in their rent will be evicted. And I don't think that's the case at all. Certainly here in Decatur, what landlords want is they simply want to be paid the rent so that they can service their mortgages and pay their taxes, because I can assure you, if tenants are not paying rent, the banks are not forgiving anybody on their mortgage payments, and the county certainly isn't going to give anybody a tax holiday. So landlords have these expenses, and so the issue about evictions really boils down to what's a reasonable way for tenants and landlords to work this out. And I'm sure that in a majority of cases, landlords will simply want to have payment plans or some other arrangement to keep good paying tenants there. For those where that doesn't work out, the city from the very beginning of this process has been very attentive to the potential economic dislocations created by COVID-19 and how it's affected people in their jobs and in their lives. From the beginning, we had 2 separate periods of time when we had a moratorium on water shutoffs. And even today, although water shutoffs have resumed, what many folks in the public may not know is that through our partner, Dove, who is managing a grant program that helps with utility and rent assistance, they also serve as an approving agency to determine that if somebody is still having those economic effects of COVID affecting their lives, they communicate that to us, and those people are still allowed to not have to pay their water bill. I mean, the amount builds up, but it's a deferral. So for key individuals that are affected by COVID, we are still not turning the water off. Second, the city has devoted over $500,000 in 2 different funding sources through Dove to make it available for utility and rent assistance. And I believe that those funds, which have not been fully expended, if they turn out to not be enough, I'm relatively confident that the City Council will decide to come up with additional ARP monies or monies from some other source to continue to make sure that those people who need those funds and qualify them can get them. But the City Council has done even more than that. At the last City Council meeting, they approved an agreement for an additional $1.4 million in a special grant made available by the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development to be used for homeless expenses, rehabilitation of structures that can be used by the homeless, and other expenses, so that when the day comes that evictions do start again, I don't think that they'll be as bad as some people have predicted, but there may be some people who are out of their homes for whatever reason, that the combination of these programs, as well as our partnerships with many other social service agencies here in Decatur, will be able to take care of that problem. Finally, I just want to implore all of us just to be kind to one another. All of our first responders, for the most part, report that even normal interactions of first responders sometimes get more violent than they need to. Not that people are carrying firearms necessarily, but that there's more likelihood for fists to be thrown and people to get shoved, or inappropriate and disrespectful or even vulgar language to be used. It's a problem nationwide. It's not unique to Decatur. In fact, it's probably better in Decatur because Decatur has a lot of folks that are basically kind. But I think it's important to just start being more kind to one another. Our police are working very hard to make sure that the environment and the streets are safe. Despite the attention given by the media to some of the more high-profile crimes that we have had here in Decatur, our crime statistics still are below many of our sister communities in downstate Illinois. And since the beginning of 2020, nearly 80% of murders here in Decatur have been solved, and people have been arrested and brought to justice for those things through the hard work of our police department and their investigative division, and through the tools and equipment, software, and other assistance funded by the mayor and the city council, and by some of the grant programs that we were a part of. So just be kind to one another. Thanks for tuning in. I look forward to talking to you again next week.